Welcome to Swing State. I'm Fox 8 senior political reporter Bob Buckley, and an important episode tonight as we welcome one of North Carolina's two U.S. senators. In this case, is Republican Ted Budd. Welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Bob.
Appreciate it. I got to ask you, the hot issue of the day is the presidential race. How do you assess what we're seeing? Because the vice president, of course, got a lot of momentum when she essentially got the nomination.
Well, let's start with North Carolina. Trump won in 2016. He won
Yep.
in 2020. I think he's going to win in 2024. He's going to do the work. This is a state where you have to ask voters. You have to make your case. He's going to do that. He believes he's going to win, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that he wins.
Razor thin margins, though, and especially the last time when he ran.
Yeah, look, people start focusing on this later in the year. We got 90-some days from this point. He's going to win.
Okay. What do you make of the choice of J.D. Vance for the vice presidential role? You served with him in the Senate and on the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, so you know him pretty well.
Well, he's a friend. I've been admiring since 2018. If you know him, he's a caring individual, so smart. If you look at his background, where he started, I mean, a tough background in Eastern Kentucky, rural Ohio. His life is about growth and scale. He loves his wife, loves his family. So I'm very excited about him. He is a good candidate, and he is a great vice presidential pick for President Trump.
You have to admit, though, this was a choice that looks like a choice made by a man who said, I have this one. Because when he was chosen, President Biden was still the opponent. And looked like former President Trump was going to run away with this. It wasn't a move that said, we're going to reach out to more moderate Republicans. It was a move that said, I'm taking a guy who can go into rural Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and tell those disaffected former Democrats or independents we're on your side.
I think it says to the hardworking men and women out there from all backgrounds that we care about you, because this is somebody that came from that background. He saw the devastation of an open border. He saw opioids and fentanyl and what it did. I mean, you can read in his book, Hillbilly Elegy. I've read it twice. And I think if you haven't read it, take a look and just see the background that he came from. And I think it should appeal to people of all backgrounds.
Yeah, I read excerpts of the book and seen the film, which is really well done. The other hot issue is what's going on in the Middle East. Israel's mission to eliminate Hamas and now dealing with Hezbollah on the northeast border. What do we need to do there?
Yeah, first of all, you got to show strength. We've got four major border issues. The first I would start with our priority is at our southern border. And we're seeing people from there, from the Middle East, that are terrorists that are coming in through our southern border. But the reason I say four is because it includes Gaza, Israel, southern Israel. It also includes Ukraine, includes Taiwan. So those are four major issues, all that emanate out of weakness from the Biden-Harris administration. Had we just been strong, none of these would be a problem, whether it's at our own southern border or whether it be Taiwan or whether it be in the Middle East.
But they are problems now. What do we do? What would you recommend any next president do? I mean, even a lot of Jewish Americans who support the idea of Israel's existence don't necessarily support what President Netanyahu or Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing. President Netanyahu will say, he says, you can't take out half of a cancer, you must eliminate the cancer, even if it means got to cut out some other tissue. What do we tell Mr. Netanyahu in this case?
Well, I think he was very clear in his speech at the joint session of Congress a week or so ago. He said, give us what we need when we need it, and we'll finish it quicker. So by the fact of the Biden-Harris administration delaying, it's taken so long to prosecute a war which could have been done months ago. I believe that he has to get rid of the cancer. He's got several goals. One is to demilitarize Gaza, to de-radicalize it. And I really think that he wants somebody other than Israel to manage that and to administer it from here on. Some other partner which is more compatible in the Middle East, but it can't allow the radicalization that Hamas has been doing, funded by Iran. So he has to get rid of that. But if the Biden-Harris administration had have acted quicker, first of all, it wouldn't have happened. And had they acted quicker, it would have been over.
We used to, at a time not too long ago in America, both parties could come together to support allies. We saw Vice President Harris make a choice not to be there for Netanyahu's speech to Congress.
Yeah, I think it was a travesty. You have a head of state. There was no head of state that came to Joint Base Andrews to greet him. They weren't there. They took a retiring Democrat member of the Senate to sit behind Netanyahu as he gave his speech. Of course, Mike Johnson welcomed him. I was there. We welcomed him. And I just think that sends a very poor signal, and we need to show him strength and support in their time of need. It's our greatest ally. It's a force for democracy in the Middle East. They've been with us since their existence, and we've been with them. I hate to see the fracture under Harris.
We saw recently some people held in foreign prisons brought home. Meanwhile, there are 5 Americans believed to be held by Hamas. Still, you have been very vocal about the North Carolina hostage being held by Hamas, Keith Siegel. You spoke about him on the Senate floor, I think just a few weeks after the October 7th attack. What should be the plan in getting those Americans back safely?
Well, you've got to go after Hamas, first of all. I mean, they are truly a cancer for the region. Israel has been that. We have to be very clear. We cannot equivocate. And the stronger we are, the more quickly we bring them home. Every single week I work on this with some partners in the Senate. And we reach across the aisle on that. When we travel to Israel, we go with both parties. So this is not something that's partisan, but it's especially hurtful to us. It's especially meaningful to us. For Aviva, the wife, and Keith, who is in prison right now, captured by Hamas, to bring them home. And we think of it as all 8 Americans, because some of we've gotten word that they're not alive, and we want them to be returned to their family to have be properly put to rest.
Would you support a ceasefire to get the hostages back?
Look, it has to be, you have to get as close to it as possible. Netanyahu, Mossad, the IDF have up-to-date intelligence on that. Whatever it takes to get the hostages home, we want to do that, but you can't demonstrate weakness at the same time. They respect strength.
All right, just a couple of minutes left in this segment, but what do we do then with Ukraine? We keep funding their defense at the level we have. I'm asking, I don't know. And if we don't, what happens? Russia is become an abductor state, and that's a whole other issue on the hostage group. But what do we do with Ukraine? Do we continue to put billions of dollars into this?
Well, let's go back to what happened in Israel. It's kind of the same answer, different place. Be strong, be decisive. They equivocated. We had intelligence early on, before February 2021, 2022, when they invaded, that would have stopped this. And had we been stronger more quickly, had we given them what they need, but the Biden-Harris administration has delayed. They've been unclear. The other thing we need to do is make sure that our allies in Europe step up and pay at least 2%, especially those that are part of NATO. 2% of their GDP needs to be funding their defense. That makes it stronger and allows them to support Ukraine.
Yeah, right now I believe it's about 2/3 of NATO countries meet that level.
Yeah, so there's a dangerous 1/3 that doesn't.
Yeah, all right. Well, more to come tonight, including whether there has been a turn in Republican politics on free trade, and that phrase that seems to be on every Democrat's lips these days, Project 2025. That's next. Welcome back to Swing State. Tonight we are talking with North Carolina U.S. Senator Ted Budd. Both the former President Trump and Senator Vance have spoken about what Vance calls the deindustrialization of our economy. Both talk about tariffs as a way to stem the tide of some imports, though 80%, of course, of what we import aren't finished goods. They're parts that we use here, too. What's your point? Will the Republican Party under a Trump-Vance administration become less of a free trade party?
Well, I think all of us in our heart and principle believe in free trade, but not when we have unfair trading partners like China. We have to put tariffs on them because they won't deal fairly with us. They're going to take advantage of us. They're going to steal our intellectual property, and they're going to have very unfair labor practices among their own people. For instance, the Uyghurs, slave labor, producing goods to send to the U.S. That's not fair to them. That's not fair to us. So we have to use it as a very harsh tool. I don't like tariffs. I never have. In principle, I'd like to be a free trader. But when you have people like Mexico allowing precursors of drugs to come in and they don't respond to our request to help us secure the border under the Trump administration, that made them stand up and pay attention. And we can do the same thing with China.
Would you cut off all aid to countries like Mexico?
Look, you have to look at it case-by-case basis, but first of all, you said, what is it going to take to make them play fair? Yeah. And we can have a mutually agreeable agreement, but at the same time, you can't let them act like they have been. It hurts our workers, it hurts our families. We've lost hundreds of thousands of individuals from the ingredients that have come across our border and been turned into fentanyl.
Would you support federal troops down there, Army?
On our side of the border?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Look, all you have to do, if you look at what Kamala Harris has done as vice president, President Biden put her in charge of the border. I mean, some people call it the border czar, but she is in charge of the border. Joe Biden on the border issue said, "You speak for me."
We've run the sound bites. He did indeed say you're in charge of the border. Yes.
Absolutely, and it's been an absolute travesty. We used to round up and say 10 million. Now we're rounding up and saying 15 million people have come here illegally.
And it's not so much that some of them may be fleeing bad situation, generally want to live an American life. There are too many people in there that we know are on terrorist watch lists.
Yes.
And we know are from China that we don't know anything about. Let me stick, though, with the economy in that you come from a family that owns a small business. Do you have any issues with what you hear from Trump Vance than economics in general?
I'm very concerned with what I see right now, and this is the last 4 years has made life unsafe and unaffordable for families, and especially small businesses. You've got people trying to put gas in their cars and diesel in their trucks and pay for equipment, and they're worried about investing because of the Trump tax cuts that are being the Biden administration would allow to lapse.
Right, they would
It's very
expire
concerning.
next year. But what about from the Trump Vance team? Anything you hear from in their prescription that you would?
I am very excited about their economic plan. I mean, it's very clear. If people are wondering what they believe in, there's 20 things on the Republican platform, very simple to look at. They simplified the plan. We got to grow our economy. We can do it. This is the most blessed place on earth to live, even with all of our challenges, Bob.
Yeah.
This is an amazing place. We just can't make it more unaffordable and more unsafe, which is what Kamala Harris has done.
You know, every sentence uttered by a Democrat between now and the election will include the words Project 2025. The president and his campaign have distanced themselves from it in no uncertain terms. What do you make of it? I mean, have you had a chance to see it or read it, or do you have any concerns that might be introduced in bills?
Heard of it, haven't read it. Trump hasn't read it to my knowledge. It's an independent think tank, and I think the person that developed it has stepped down from his job. So I can't speak for it.
It includes more than 100 conservative groups, though, so it's essentially every conservative activist these days has some hand in it, but it's a wish list. You know, and I just don't know. I'm just curious how much the party might embrace it as far as developing a platform for a next administration.
When you come to Trump Vance, you don't have to guess about them, or you don't have to assume some independent think tank is going to be the plan, because what he's done is he's going to do more and more efficiently what he did from 2017 to 2021. He was a great president, and we want him to be president again.
Predictions right now appear in favor of a flip-flop. Republican Senate and a Democratic House after this election. How will that change things? You've served in both places.
Well, I'm encouraged about the House as well.
Okay.
I think Mike Johnson, he came in with me in 2016. He's a great leader. He's doing a great job in an impossible situation. So kudos to him in the House. We're very optimistic about some blue districts that are turning red. People are very frustrated about what the Democrats have enabled, and they're tired of it. They realize that they've made life unaffordable and unsafe, and they're tired of it.
Well, because, though, it looks like it may well be a Democratic House, that's not a long shot. Is that going to bring things to a halt when you have a Republican Senate? And typically when different parties run the two different houses, things don't get done.
Well, look, if we have a Republican Senate, so you could do something like reconciliation like you did in 2017. That's how we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. 94% of individuals out there, give or take, got a take-home pay cut. So we could do that again with a Republican Senate and a Republican administration. But again, all I know is we're going to work really hard the next 90-some days to make sure we win.
Because we have a few minutes left in this segment, I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier, the military threats. There's a call in some quarters for our military saying it needs to be rebuilt. We've dropped from a 600-ship Navy under the Reagan administration to about 475 now. China is now at 680 ships, according to the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Have you looked at this? What do we need to do with our military?
I look at it every week when I'm up there, because I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and it's an absolute privilege. We have 8 active military bases in North Carolina. So it's probably the second biggest industry to our state. So we're grateful for them here. Navy, it would be more Virginia. Yes, it's a concern, but when you look at our strength in blue water, meaning the big ocean, we're a lot stronger than China, but we have to watch the trajectory, and we have to watch that we continue our investment. And we have to make sure that our focus is on things that move the needle, not on, we need to work on lethality, not on social programs that a lot of folks would push in the military. It's not a place for social experimentation, it's a place for deterrence and lethality. I would also watch that we spend about $886 billion. Republicans have asked for an additional $25 billion for our military. But I would also go back to the fact that our interest on our debt is just about to cross that $880 billion number. So it's a very dangerous point for any country when the amount that they spend on their debt exceeds the amount that they spend on their own defense. Because I'll tell you what, defense is expensive. Going to war is a lot more expensive. We spend 5, 6, 7%, 5% on our own GDP on defense right now. In World War II, it was about 35% of our GDP. We can't get to that point.
Vietnam, too, it was significantly lower. But, we see this, and both parties say they want to rein in spending, and it never happens. I mean, that's a concern, even for Republican voters. They say, we send you there to cut the budget, and we're almost out of time in this segment, so I don't know how much you can address it before we go to break, but that has to be a concern.
We have to protect benefits for those that have earned it, and we have to freeze spending, and we have to grow this country, grow this economy.
All right. We're not done yet. We still need to talk about what the most polls say is one of the country's top issues, the southern border. That's next. We're back with a few more minutes with North Carolina Republican Senator Ted Budd. You have gone to the border more than most people in Congress. I think sometimes viewers get numb to the numbers and the reports, and it just becomes noise to them. What have you seen there, and what do people need to know?
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I would say the human trafficking is something that's underreported and overly impactful. The cartels have figured out that they can make a lot more money on women and young children than they can even on the drugs.
Wow.
It is a $10 billion plus. It was probably less than $1 billion a decade ago, but now it's $13 billion plus that they make every single year on exploiting women and children. It's a travesty.
President Trump says that he will do in his words, mass deportation if he's reelected. Is that doable? And if so, what does it look like?
Well, I think you have to take it in layers, right? Obviously, there are some that are hardened criminals. You start with that. You give people the option of returning on their own. And then I think at the same time, you've got to do some sort of welfare reform, because you've got business leaders out there that are saying, well, maybe they hired someone. How do we replace that person? Well, they shouldn't have been doing it to begin with. But at the same time, let's make sure that we have a strong workforce. So we work on workforce while at the same time working in layers through the deportations.
We also got situations like there was recently a plea deal offered to the 9/11 masterminds so that they wouldn't have to face the death penalty. And then we had a case where there were two people from the Middle East who were arrested trying to break into Quantico. And they were just released with a promise to appear in court later on very small bonds. I mean, how do we stem this?
Well, you have to be very clear, you have to be very strong, and you have to be for the rule of law. It's that type of prosecutorial approach that Kamala Harris has supported ever since her days as a prosecutor in San Francisco. It lets dangerous people out on bail. It makes our cities, makes our country more dangerous. Essentially, they've just turned terrorists loose.
But Congress can't, you really can't mandate that, right? I mean, these are separate issues, separate.
We can do whatever we can as far as federal funding and steering federal funding from a congressional level, but locally, you have to have strong prosecutors.
All right, Congresswoman Kathy Manning was in that seat a couple of months ago and talked about the bipartisan border security bill that she helped negotiate that Republicans backed off from. Democrats say only because former President Trump said that he didn't want it in place so that he could run on the issue. What did you make of that bill? Why didn't it pass?
It's a deceptive political ploy. You can see that Chuck Schumer never intended for it to be a vote. As soon as we asked for amendments, which is the normal process, he threw it away and then went ahead only with Ukraine funding. So it was very insincere on his part. If we can work together on this, Senator James Lankford, Republican from Oklahoma, worked as hard as he could across the aisle, morning, night, for months. And then as soon as we tried to amend it with some more favorable approaches and some additional legislation, he pulled it and threw the whole thing away. So I think it's very insincere on Schumer's part.
There's a concern too that what we call regular order doesn't exist anymore. It used to be bills would be introduced, committees would look at them, call witnesses, everything, and they would form a bill that went to the House. Now it seems like certainly in the House, which you served in, everything's done in the Speaker's office behind closed doors, and then whoever Speaker comes out and says, here's the bill you're going to vote for.
Well, when people ask for transparency, they're asking for regular order. That's what we want. If we go through a regular process, I think it more reflects what the people in the districts back home, including right here in the Triad, send us to Washington, D.C. to do. When it all gets, I don't think any rooms are smoky anymore, but at the same time, people are very concerned that they don't know the process to get to these bills.
Just a couple of minutes left, and I want to have a little more fun stuff to talk about, including what's life like in the Senate? I mean, you've been in both the House and the Senate. Is this what you thought it would be when you ran?
I don't think you ever make an accurate prediction, but first of all, to the people of North Carolina that elected me, I'm absolutely grateful. We went to all 100 counties back during the campaign, and people would ask me, hey, thanks, but I understand you're campaigning. Once you're elected, are you ever going to come back? And so we're working our way back through all 100 counties just to say, we still hear you, we're still there to serve you. Even though I'm in Washington on your behalf, I still see what's going on. So in just a week or two, we'll have been back to all 100 counties to say thank you and to hear issues on the ground. And for me to understand not just the 10 counties that I represented in the last district, but to see what's going on in Northeast North Carolina and the ag sectors and the coastal regions and way west, I mean, west of Asheville, it's just it shows me what an amazing, beautiful state. So even if, I mean, people love to travel when they can and they can afford it, but just to be able to go in this state and to see the assets that we have here in North Carolina makes me very proud when I get to serve this place in Washington.
And there's a lot to be said for someone who comes home and continues to stay connected to the people. Another side of this, though, is it seems like people on the Hill don't spend enough time together to build the kind of trust it takes to be able to have an exchange. And there's very little compromise anymore on the Hill, it seems like. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I'd say about, I'm going to throw a number out, 80% of the things have votes from both parties. They are bipartisan bills. It's the big things. I know, you know, in your business, Bob, if it bleeds, it leads, right? And so there's going to be a lot of bills which have a lot of tension, and they're going to be one party or the other. But there's some things like defense, for instance. The committee I'm on is going to be overwhelmingly bipartisan. Now, there's issues in defense that we disagree on.
Well, who are you dealing with well? Who do you find you've built relationships with there on the Hill?
Look, I don't agree with everyone, but I get along with almost everyone up there. So it is a collegial place. Rather than 435 members, there's only 100. So it's easier to get to know others. And because we have more of an international role by Constitution in the Senate, there's going to be more travel, and you do get to know others when you're traveling on behalf of the United States around the world.
And just less than a minute left, and I wanted to ask, what's the big unfinished project for you when you go back to D.C.?
One of the things we've been working on is protecting our F-15s. If you look at when Iran attacked Israel, it was the Seymour Johnson F-15s that stood up and helped shoot down those drones and cruise missiles. And then many from the Air Force tried to divest us of those very same F-15s, which have decades perhaps of wing life left on them. So I'm saying we are defending those, and it's not for North Carolina reasons only, it is for national defense reasons. And so we're able to do that, and we're very successful in this year's Senate bill for defense.
And F-16s too.
Well, those are out of South Carolina, but those as well.
All right, very good. Well, you know, that is it for tonight. Remember, we are not just a TV show, we're also a podcast. You can listen to us on your phone by searching Swing State wherever you get your podcast. And they're also uploaded on our website at mypikesite.com.